check my answer copies and not just motivate me that I was doing really well, the positive feedback wala mechanism, but also it gave me some really wonderful tips on to how I can improve my score even better. And
I have been a student of sociology at Prime 5AS, and Vikas Ranjan sir, he personally guided and mentored me through my sociology answer writing.
I would like to thank personally Vikas Ranjan sir for his mentorship in both optional sociology and in essay test series.
In this civil services examination also, sociology was my option after consistent guidance of Vikas Ranjan sir, and I scored this time 285 marks.
I had sociology as optional. I had taken test series from Vikas Ranjan sir, and the feedback provided by sir for my test was very regular. And
hi everybody, this is Bhuvaneshram. I have secured already a rank 41 in UPSC Civil Services Examination 2023. My optional was psychology, and this video I would be discussing my approach to psychology and how to get better marks in psychology. So regarding my own journey, this was my 4th mains with psychology as optional, and I had scored 293 marks in psychology this year, which if I am not wrong is the highest this year as well. So I would just cover the basics regarding the psychology optional because I feel the guidance or the information availability for psychology optional is very poor. So coming to sources as such, the most important source for psychology, I feel perhaps more than the conventional books also, is I would emphasize on 3 important sources. One main source is the previous year question papers. So this is a very valuable source as long as far as psychology optional is concerned, because a lot of questions keep repeating in this examination. The second most important source is toppers answers copies, because in psychology especially the content and the form both are very important. So only when we see a lot of toppers answers copies, we will know what are the small tweaks that they do to write the answers differently or write the answers in a better manner, in a more crisp manner. So toppers answers copies is one more important source. The third important source is syllabus. So when we take psychology, there are 14 chapters in paper 1, 14 chapters in paper 2, right? So we should be able to know each and every word of the syllabus thoroughly, like the back of our hand. So it helps us put a limit to our preparation, put a contour to our preparation, and it also helps us be thorough in preparation in the sense that we have notes and we have content on each and every word of the syllabus. So these 3 sources I would like to emphasize very highly. If somebody is not referring these 3 sources, it is very unlikely that they will get high marks in this examination. So apart from that, coming to the conventional sources, of course I relied heavily on NCERTs. That's where everybody starts with. NCERTs 11th and 12th class. So for psychology, that is a very good source. Then I followed psychology by Wayne, W-A-Y-N-E, Wayne, W-E-I-T-I-N. So this book was suggested to me by a mentor with whom I started my preparation in psychology. So as you can see, this is a very unconventional source, and when I saw a lot of people who cleared the examination, they referred to other sources which are equally good, Barron, Cicerelli, etc. But what I am trying to illustrate is that regardless of the source you study, the conventional source, you have to be thorough in the first 3 sources that I mentioned, and 2, you have to write answers according to the demand of the question. That's what is important for mains. The examiner is not going to be concerned which sources you are following, right? As long as it is a standard source that is being followed in universities and institutes, I think it is well and good. So for me, this source worked because I started with it. I found it to be very simple, very illustrative, full of case studies and examples, and I stuck with it. So that was my primary source. I also used psychology by Robert Barron and Girishwar Mishra. It is specific to Indian subcontinent. This also was suggested to me by another mentor. But of course, I read it only selectively to source only Indian examples from this book. So apart from that, for research methodologies, I didn't refer any specific book other than the sources that I mentioned. I did general Googling because, as I said, when you know the syllabus like the back of your hand, you know each and every word of it, and you prepare content for it. Some supplementary sources I used which was given to me by my mentor. But apart from that, it is more or less self-preparation. You will have to actively source content, and you will have to be sure that whatever word or phrase is mentioned in the syllabus, you have conceptual clarity, especially when it comes to research methodologies. So these are the conventional sources that I followed for paper 1. For paper 2, by default it is Mark's Find for everybody. For me also it was like that. But of course I had to improvise upon it. I'll touch upon it, paper 2 especially, much later. So now that we have talked about the most important sources, both in terms of examination and conventional sources, how do we go about preparing for this optional subject? So like I said, I studied with a mentor, so I attended his classes, but regardless of the coaching institute, and this applies for any stage of the examination and all papers, I think the support that the coaching institutes give is just 10% of it, right? 90% is and has to be your own self preparation, has to be your own process, your own approach, your own take on the subject. So what I did was that I had two kinds of notes when I prepared. One was the long form notes, which is where I took the notes from classes, and which is where I added content when I read from NCRTs and the standard sources. Each and every aspect of the chapter, each and every word of the chapter, I had notes. The short form notes is very crisp, very exam specific and revision oriented. So after the first reading and second reading, when you, since I like to take notes, I took long form notes from all these chapters. You start taking tests, right? When you take tests, I think it is crucial and very, very helpful to have short form notes. In my case, I had online short form notes. My long form notes was offline, which is where I write in notebooks, but my short form notes was online, largely in Evernote app. So for each chapter, I basically had a mind map. I think in Cicerelli book, there are good mind maps after each chapter, that also you can refer. I briefly refer to it. But for me, my own short form notes where I summarized each chapter and I noted down key definitions, key case studies, key psychologists' names is what is helpful. I have shared all my resources in my Telegram channel for those who are preparing for psychology and other aspects as well. You can search Bhuvaneshram 41 in Telegram. I have shared all my resources there and I hope you find them useful. So I had these two kinds of notes which helped me, one, get the conceptual clarity better, and two, revise better and keep adding as and when you attend many many tests and examinations. So that is one part of it. So after you go through these sources, first reading, second reading, you take notes. Like I said, the answer writing part comes in, right? So it is a good practice to enroll in a test series. There are some test series in the market. You can enroll with any of them which you find good, but you have to have the regular standard answer writing practice, because like any other paper in mains, content and form both are important. The way you write the answers, how you present it, how you interpret the question, how you are able to answer the demand of the question is very, very important. So I maintained a separate notebook where I wrote 2 questions on an average per day. Some day when I read more on GS, I read only 1 question per day. But I ensure that I maintain this daily answer writing flow, because only then you will be in the practice of putting the content that you read on paper. Because if you keep reading, you will have the sense of familiarity, but only when you write answers, you will be able to know how much you have actually grasped and how you are able to present it. So answer writing practice is very, very crucial. Do ensure that you have daily answer writing practice, and you can also follow any test series. So another aspect which I mentioned is content versus form, right? So why I am emphasizing this is because, like I said, this is my 4th mains. So in my previous mains, though my content was good, I knew I was good, I was grasping it well, my marks ranged in that good to very good zone, like 260, 270 like that, which was okay, good enough to get a selection. But I wanted to increase my marks to that excellent zone, like 290, 300, 300 plus, right? Of course, not much is under control, but there is still scope for improvement, right? It is not like once you have chose this optional, which is not very popular, there is no scope for improvement. Every year there are people who are in that range, so you just have to be in the top 1 to 2% of your optional. Which is where the toppers answer copies come in. So the aspect that I was mentioning, content versus form, I am emphasizing because in my previous attempts my content was good and I thought my form was good, but I realized that there was scope for improvement in my form rather than in my content, because I have given quite a number of mains, so my content was pretty much on par with other toppers as well. So please understand that in mains, content and form both are important. What you write is as important as how you write. So what do I mean by form, right? This form is where you can enrich your answers. You can present it in a very, very different style. Coming to psychology, there are many things that you can do to value add or to enrich your answers, how to enrich your form. So the first thing is definitions. Whenever the question is about a concept, you can easily start with the definition that is given by a standard psychologist, right? Definition. Second is the name of the psychologist. You cannot afford to lose the name of the psychologist when a question is on the related area, right? Because those people who are correcting, they are all professors from very top tier institutions. So you have to ensure that you put in that little masala of the psychologist's name. Third is case studies. Whichever is there in the standard textbooks, you have to be thorough in ensuring that you should reproduce it. Fourth is flow charts and diagrams. So for a lot of models and a lot of theories, you have standard flow charts, standard diagrams, right? So please ensure that at least in a small box or so, you incorporate the diagram and flow chart so that it breaks the monotony of the examiner who corrects your paper. So this quotes which I mentioned, it is a good example, I mean good practice to have a ready-made collection of quotes. The first one which I mentioned was definitions, which is given by standard psychologists. But apart from that, you will have quotes which is not directly relevant to the concept, but still you can quote them easily when it is given by a standard psychologist or when it is relevant to the concept. Like for example, for this nature and nurture controversy, I used to quote this quote which goes like, genes confer neither dispositions nor destinies. So it effectively conveys that nature is not the ultimate determinant of behavior. It was given by Dick and Rose, the two psychologists. So it is a good practice to have these quotes also ready made so that these standard kind of questions you can use them and it will impress the examiner. One more thing that I would like to emphasize is, since psychology is a very dynamic subject, almost every answer you can treat as like a small mini essay only. So you don't have to and you cannot get marks if you just reproduce whatever is there in the standard textbooks. So please ensure that you read the questions properly, you understand it properly, and don't try to fit in case studies or experiments which is there in the book just because it is on the related concept. A lot of questions will be application based, like real life examples, real life applications of classical conditioning. You don't have to necessarily write the Pavlov experiment, dog study. You'll have to be more focused on what is actually the application in real life, right? So on a related note, how to handle unconventional questions, how to handle application oriented questions, how to handle these googly kind of questions which you cannot easily find the answer in standard textbooks. So one approach which I did was that I swore by the syllabus, meaning since I said that syllabus is one of the most important sources in the first three which I mentioned, when you know the syllabus at like the back of your hand, you will have a very good bird's eye view of the subject as well. So for example, if the question is, let's say, issues of elderly citizen in the modern era or something like that, for which you don't have ready-made answers, you can go by your syllabus, like start from learning, are there issues in learning, then come to memory, are there issues in memory, then come to personality, come to intelligence, come to motivation and emotion, right? So it gives you one, a good framework to answer your questions, and two, it indirectly helps you incorporate all the keywords in the syllabus. Almost no keyword you would have missed if you are taking this approach. So take the syllabus approach for unconventional questions. It is a very good approach in my opinion. Yeah, coming to paper 2, my standard source was Mark Twain, but what happens is everybody is referring Mark Twain, and the examples and the case studies that we quote tend to become similar, right? So this time I ensure that I went back to internet and I sourced my own examples, my own case studies. Like for example, there is a role of social agencies in rehabilitation psychology. Instead of quoting the same old NGOs which is there in this Mark Twain, you can actively Google about it, NGOs which work with the government. It will be an additional example, right? Which not a lot of people quote. So that is one good practice to have in respect to paper 2. Do your own research, collect your own examples, collect your own research papers as well. So like standard topics like depression, therapies and all that, there is a lot of research that is continuously happening even by standard psychologists who are doing pioneering work. So I think you can incorporate their recent research papers in relation to, let's say, effect of depression on intelligence or effect of depression on career progression, etc. So when you have your own collection of case studies, collection of research papers, you can pepper them in your answers very well. So for paper 2, that is one good approach. Another approach that I found useful is that I feel you should wear 2 hats when you answer any question, especially in paper 2, also for paper 1 perhaps. These 2 hats are the hats of an examiner and the hat of a government servant, a civil servant. So the hat of the examiner is where you try to basically impress the examiner. You try to be as diverse in your answer as possible, as crisp as possible, as to the point as possible, as technical as possible, as methodological and as research oriented as possible. So when you are integrating all this, the examiner will definitely get impressed. So going back to all the answer enrichment techniques that I was talking about, flowcharts, codes, definitions, etc., this will help in gaining the attention of the examiner, right? So even if some answers are bad and most of your answers are good, the halo effect will come in, right? As we study, the general impression about you will be just based on your good answers and you will definitely get good marks. So think like the examiner. If you are the examiner, what would impress you, right? The second thinking hat is that of the civil servant. So whenever you give examples in paper 2, try to give as many government schemes, government initiatives, government policies as examples, because ultimately we are going to be civil servants tomorrow after we clear the examination. So the examiner will appreciate that you are trying to integrate psychology in terms of administration. The more examples you give in view of the administration, from the point of view of administration, the better it will be and the easier it is for you to score marks. Since I stayed with the subject, I developed a genuine interest in the subject, and I feel having a genuine interest in any optional subject will help, because you will go the extra mile to read a lot about it, right? In my case, I try to read Emotional Intelligence, the original work by Daniel Goleman. I also read Cialdini's Influence, the book. So it not only helps you in life in a broader perspective, but it helps you get case studies, it helps you get definitions which is not there in standard textbooks. So you can integrate this if time permits and if interest permits for you, but it definitely proved to be an advantage to me. Another thing is that you can add complementary sources. So there are a lot of sources in the internet. Some websites that I regularly followed was Very Well Mind, Simply Psychology. These websites, they have standard simplified definitions. I also referred APA website a lot, APA glossary a lot for definitions. So these websites will definitely help. And coming to YouTube channels, Crash Course Psychology by John Green, it is a very good YouTube channel, very concise, it helps you in conceptual clarity. To go a little bit more deeper, Psych Exam Review is also a very good channel. So these are some channels that I watched. There are channels by Stanford and MIT where their whole lectures are uploaded for free. So if you want to get a very technical and academic approach, you can also visit those videos also. So as we learn, visual learning always helps, right? It helps in dual coding and our memory becomes that much better to reproduce answers. So I would suggest that these learnings can be integrated in your approach also. And I hope you find my inputs useful, and I wish all the best for all the aspirants. Thank you so much.